As you should recall from the previous lecture, the first element to a contract is the agreement. Now, our objectives for this particular lecture are first to be able to identify the elements of an offer, to explain how an offer may be terminated, and to recall the elements of acceptance. Now, the agreement has two parts, an offer and an acceptance. We're going to start off talking about the offer. At this point, the parties to the contract are referred to as the offeror. This is the party that makes the offer. He shows intent to enter into a contract by making a definite offer and communicates the offer to the offeree. The second party, as I just said, is the offeree, who shows intent to accept the offer, communicates acceptance by proper means to the offeror, and states that acceptance mirrors the terms of the offer. Now, this is how it goes. The offer initiates, the offeree receives. An offer is a promise to do or refrain from doing some specified thing now or in the future. The required elements for an effective offer are serious intent on the part of the offeror to enter into a legal binding contract, reasonably certain or definite terms, and communication. The offer must be communicated by the offeror to the offeree. Now we're going to talk about each one of these elements in turn. You start off with intention. To interpret the parties' words and conduct to determine their intent, the Lord adheres to the objective theory of contracts. Now you should remember this from the last lecture. Basically, first question you ask is, what did the parties say when entering into a contract? How did the parties appear when entering into the contract? And what were the circumstances surrounding the transaction? Now, as I'm sure you recall, by asking these three questions, the court can determine whether or not the parties actually intended to enter into a contract. Once again, the objective theory of contracts focuses on objective facts, not the secretive, self-serving, subjective facts of the parties to determine whether or not a contract actually exists. The same thing applies to an offer. Common sense way to remember this is, if a reasonable person, an average person, were to hear an offer and infer that that offer is serious, the offer is serious. Now, there are things that sound like offers, but they're not offers at all. Like the Godfather saying, I make him an offer he can't refuse. First thing that sounds like an offer, but is not an offer, is an expression of opinion. For example, the contractor says this house could be renovated for $30,000. He's not saying he's going to do it for $30,000, but he's giving you his opinion on how much it would cost to renovate the house. Now, depending on what you want to hear, you might hear him offering to do it, but he is not making an offer. He's simply giving his opinion. A statement of intention might sound like an offer, but it's not. For example, I'm selling my Rolex tomorrow. If your friend were to say that to you, they're telling you what they're planning to do, not that they're planning to do it with you. They are not offering to sell you their watch. They're simply telling you they intend to sell the watch. So once again, A statement of intention is not an offer. Preliminary negotiations are not offers. Now, the first and most common type of preliminary negotiation is the solicitation of bids. The solicitation of bids. Now, this is important to remember. The party soliciting the bids is not making an offer. The party tendering bids is making an offer. Right? If you look at the example, we have a general contractor soliciting bids from subcontractors. So basically what she's saying is, how much can you do this job for? That's the solicitation of a bid. What the subcontractors are saying is, I can do it for $1 million. I can do it for $2 million. I can do it for $2.5 million. Right? When they say I can do it for, they are making an offer. So with preliminary negotiations, with the solicitation of bids, what you have to remember is the party soliciting a bid is not making an offer. The party tendering a bid is making an offer. Now, the second type of situation that falls under preliminary negotiations will be haggling. And that's where somebody goes to a merchant to buy something, right? And basically, it usually starts off, you go over to the merchant and says, well, how much are these tomatoes? And the merchant looks and says, this is one of the greatest tomatoes ever made. I couldn't let you have it for a penny less than $500. You look back, you say, that's ridiculous. You know, that's not a fancy tomato. I'll give you a nickel. The merchant comes back and says, no. I could never sell it that cheaply. Tell you what I'll do. I'll sell it to you for $200. You say, that is ridiculous. I'll give you $1. That's haggling as it goes back and forth. Now, here's the thing. When the merchant said they would sell you tomato for $500, they did not expect you to pay that amount of money. When you said, I'll give you a nickel for the tomato, you did not expect them to take that amount of money, right? That's the preliminary negotiation part. Now, the tricky thing about haggling is that as soon as the stated amounts get close to the value of the subject matter, it moves from being preliminary negotiations to being actual offers. Right? So to haggle, the parties must have some knowledge with regard to the value of the item they're negotiating. As a general rule, an advertisement is not an offer. What an advertisement is an invitation to negotiate. Now, the reason why an advertisement is not an offer is because it does not have all of the terms required in an offer, right? Some essential terms are missing, specifically the who. Advertisements, as a general rule, do not specify to whom the offer is being made. So without that one little requirement, that one specific detail, it's an invitation to negotiate. And if you think about this, if you go to a store, let's say Macy's, and there was an ad in the newspaper to sell suits, and you see a suit you really like, let's say it's a $1,000 suit and they're selling it for $500, 50% off. You pick out a suit that you like, you try it on, it's your size. When you go to the counter to pay, you said, I really like the suit, but I have a question for you. Can you do any better? Now, generally, the salesperson is going to say, no, I can't. So what do you say? Let me see your manager. Right? When you speak to the manager, you say, look, I really like this suit. I really want to buy this suit. What I want to know is, what can you do for me? Can you give me a better price? 99% of the time, if you ask for a better price, you'll get a better price. Why? An advertisement is not an offer. It's an invitation to come in and negotiate. Now, I know most of you probably don't do that when you buy your clothes, but if you've ever bought a car or you've gone with anybody to buy a car, one of the things that you will probably notice is no one pays the price in an ad, right? Either they pay more because the salesperson negotiates better, or they pay less because they negotiate better. But once again, the advertisement to buy that car, just like the advertisement to buy a suit, was an invitation to negotiate, not an offer. Now, one exception does occur to this rule, and that's where the offeree is named either specifically or by class, right? So if you receive an ad in the mail, let's say from a credit card company, and they say, if you, Ronald Clare, qualify, we will give you a credit card. Because they stated my name, it's an offer to me. If you go to Madison Square Garden to watch the Knicks play, right, and it's Fan Appreciation Day, and they say all fans in attendance 13 years old or under get a free commemorative basketball, it's an offer to all fans 13 or under. Next, we have auctions. Now, real quick point. With an auction, the party offering the item for sale is the offeree. The parties tendering bids are the offerors, right? Why? The party selling something is soliciting bids. I've got a lovely painting for sale. Who will give me $500 for the painting? So they're asking, who will give me? Now, what does the bidder say? I'll give you 100. Then another bidder says, I'll give you 3. Another bidder says, I'll give you 6. They're making offers. Now, with regard to auctions, there are 3 types of auctions. The first type is an auction with reserve. This is an auction where the seller reserves the right to reject the highest offer after the bidding is closed. Now, one of the reasons why you would have an auction with reserve is, you think about this. What's the purpose of an auction generally? To make a profit. If you've invested $100 in something and the highest offer is $10, why would you sell it? Right? So you reserve the right to reject the highest offer after the bidding is closed. Now, the second type of auction is an auction without reserve. This is an auction where the highest bid wins regardless of the amount. Now, a lot of times you'll have an auction without reserve when the seller has very little interest or very little investment in the item that they're selling. Let's say your Uncle Dave dies and leaves you a collection of silk ties. You got 1,000 of them. You don't wear ties. So you got 2 choices. You throw them away, you donate them, or you put them up on eBay and auction them off. Now, since you didn't pay for the ties, and since you were just going to throw them away, whatever you get is more than you were going to get, so you might have an auction without reserve. You get 50 cents a tie, you walk away with $500. That's better than nothing with no investment on your part. Now, the third type of auction is a Dutch auction. This is an auction where the highest bids equaling the number of items for sale all win, even if in different amounts. Now, the Dutch auction is an eBay phenomenon, right? You have all these sellers that have stores, and they might have multiple copies of the same item in the same size, let's say t-shirts with Black Panther on them. And they'll have 100 t-shirts for sale. So who wins? The top 100 bidders. The highest bid might be $100. The 100th bid might be 50 cents, right? But those are the 100 top bids. So each person receives a t-shirt. Now, the thing about auctions is that the seller has to let you know what type of auction it is. Is it an auction with reserve, without reserve, or Dutch auction? They will always let you know what type of auction it is.
I don't want to say this. Okay.
All offers must contain reasonably certain or definite terms. At a minimum, the offer must contain who the offer is being made to, what the contract is for, when the contract will be performed, where the contract will be performed, the quantity, the number of items the contract covers, if applicable, and price, how much the contract costs. At a minimum, who, what, when, where, quantity, and price must be included in the offer. Now, I always say that the offeror is the master of the offer. So as long as the offer has the who, what, when, where, quantity, and price, the offeror can add anything else to the offer he or she wants to. For example, I offer to sell you my car for $10,000 on Saturday in front of 199 Chambers Street at 12 noon. That's the who, what, when, where, quantity, and price. In addition, I tell you that I want the payment in cash, and I want the cash to be in brand new $20 bills. I want the $20 bills to be wrapped in $200 increments in red and yellow rubber bands. I then want the money placed in a brown paper bag inside of a brown leather briefcase with brass buckles. Now, I can add all of these other terms if I want. Why? Because I am the master of the offer. That means I have total control. Now, just to be real clear on this, the offeror makes the offer, and the offeree's one superpower is to accept or reject that offer, right? And the offeror controls the offer in its entirety. Third requirement for an offer is communication. An offer must be communicated by the offeror to the offeree. As a general rule, one cannot accept a bargain without knowing that the bargain exists. In other words, if the offeree is unaware of the offer does not exist. Period. Right? That's like that old saying. If a tree falls down in the forest and no one's around to hear it, does it make a sound? The answer is, who knows? If you don't know about it, it doesn't matter. Let's say I leave my wallet on the desk after our class. One of you, being a very honest person, picks up my wallet, and you intend to return the wallet to me. However, you have a class right after your class with me. You plan to bring it to me right after your next class is over. I go up to my office. I'm looking for my wallet. I can't find it. I run back to the classroom. I don't see it there. So I create a reward poster, $500 for return of my wallet. I place the reward poster in the business management department on the 7th floor. As I'm sure you remember, my office is on the 8th floor. After your next class is over, you come to my office on the 8th floor. You return my wallet to me. I say thank you very much. You then go downstairs to the business management department to make an appointment to see another professor, and you notice the sign, $500 for the return of Professor Claire's wallet. Here's the thing. You would not be entitled to collect that reward. Why? Because you were unaware that the offer was made, so you just returned my wallet to me out of the goodness of your heart. You're not entitled to anything because you didn't know about the offer. So once again, the offeror must communicate the offer to the offeree because the offeree cannot accept an offer he or she does not know about. Now that we've talked about the requirements to make an offer, we have to talk about terminating the offer. An offeree can transform an offer into a contract by acceptance. However, this power of acceptance can be terminated by an action of the parties or by operation of law. Let's talk about the first party, the offeror, right? An offeror can terminate an offer by revoking the offer. We call this the revocation of the offer. Generally, an offer may be revoked anytime before acceptance, even if the offeree has agreed to hold the offer open. Now, once the offer has been accepted, it's no longer an offer, it's now a contract, and the offer cannot be revoked. Now, revocation is only effective upon receipt, right? If someone does not know the offer has been revoked, the offer has not been revoked. Revocation can be expressed or implied by conduct inconsistent with the offer. I've offered to sell you my car for $5,000, and while you're thinking about it, I sell the car to someone else. Revocation of an offer made to the general public must be communicated in the same manner in which the offer was communicated. So if I run an ad in the newspaper offering to sell you my car for $5,000, if I want to revoke that offer, I have to run an ad in the same paper for the same number of days that the original ad ran. If I made an offer on TV, I have to run the revocation of the offer on TV, on the same channel, with the same show, at the same time, for just as long as I ran the offer. Now, there is one form of irrevocable or unbreakable offer, and this is an options contract, which is created when the offeror promises to hold an offer open for a specified period of time in exchange for a payment by the offeree. Basically, because the offeror receives some payment, some money or other payment to keep the offer open, the offer cannot be revoked. Let's say one of you becomes really, really famous, and you end up writing a book about your life and your experiences. The book becomes a bestseller, and Warner Brothers is expressing some interest in turning your book into a movie. I represent Warner Brothers, so I come to you and I take out an option on the rights to buy your book to turn it into a movie. Now, basically what the option contract will say is, for 6 months, I'm going to pay you $50,000 not to sell the book to anyone else but me. During that 6-month time period, I can exercise my option. I can come and buy the book. At the end of that 6-month period, if I have not exercised my option, you can sell the book, sell your story to anyone else. Now, one of the reasons why you see option contracts, particularly when you're looking at theatrical productions, is because there's a whole lot of things that go into making a movie. Your book may be a great bestseller, but what do I need? I need a good director. I need the right actors. I need the finances to put it together. And until all those things are done, I'm just asking you to hold it for 6 months. Now, the second party to a contract is the offeree. What can an offeree do? The offeree can reject the offer. The rejection can be expressed or implied with conduct, evidencing an intent not to accept. I offer to sell you my car for $5,000. An express rejection would be, no, I don't want it. An implied rejection might be looking at me, look in the car, you start laughing, and you walk away. Just like the revocation, the rejection is effective only on receipt. Now, asking about an offer is not a rejection, but an ambiguous response can be construed as a rejection. If I were to say to you, would you like to buy my car for $5,000? You go, yeah. I don't know what that means. That's very ambiguous. I could determine that by making that sound, you're rejecting my offer. Now, the other thing that the offeree can do is make a counteroffer. A counteroffer is the rejection of an offer and a simultaneous making of a new offer. Now, when the offer is made, the offeror is in charge. When the offeree says, let's say, I say, I'll sell you my car for $5,000, you look at me and say, I'll give you $4,000. And not saying yes to the $5,000, you've rejected my offer to sell it for $5,000, and you've made me a new offer to buy it for $4,000. So we've just changed places, right? Originally, I was the offerer, you were the offeree. When you made that counteroffer, you became the offeror, and now I'm the offeree. Now, here's the thing. A rejection is a rejection. Any material change to the terms of the offer automatically terminates the offer and creates a counteroffer. Now, the important thing about this is because the offeror is master of the offer, once the offer is terminated, it cannot be resuscitated. I got to say that again. Once the offer is terminated, it cannot be resuscitated. And this simply means that the offeror cannot legally be compelled to reopen the offer. He or she can if he or she wants to, but the offeree cannot compel them to do anything. So I say, I'll sell you my car for $5,000. You look at me and you say, I'll give you $4,000. I say, cool, $6,000. You say, no, I'm good. I'll buy it for $5,000. I say, cool, $7,000. You know, really, I'll buy it for $5,000. I say, cool, $8,000. There's absolutely nothing you can do to make me say $5,000 again. I can if I want to, but you cannot compel me legally to do it. Why? Because the offeror is the master of the offer. Termination by operation of law. An offeree's power to accept can be terminated by the destruction of the subject matter of an offer. I offer to sell you my car for $10,000. While you're thinking about it, the car blows up. Guess what just happened? The subject matter of the offer was destroyed. There's nothing to buy, so the offer's been terminated by operation of law. By the death or incompetence of either party, whether or not the other party has notice. Now, if you stop and you think about this for just 1 second, if I offer to sell you my car for $10,000, and while you're thinking about it, I die, to whom can you accept the offer? Nobody. If I offer to sell you my car for $10,000 and you die before you accept it, who can accept the offer? Nobody. Now, it doesn't matter whether you knew I died or not. All that matters is I'm not there to accept. Just like it doesn't matter whether I know whether you died or not. No one's there to accept. Now, you probably noticed an options contract will survive the death of the offeror. Now, we talked about the options contract a few slides ago, but I'm going to go into a little more detail, and I want you to think about this. An options contract is created when the offeree pays the offeror some consideration to keep the offer open for a specified period of time. Now, because the offeror was paid to keep the offer open, that means that the offeror received something to do that before the offeror died. And once again, that's something for something, right? So what does that mean? That means is, going back to that example, you wrote the book. I've got a 6-month option on your book. In month number 3, you die. Because I have the option to buy the rights to your story, I can exercise that option against your estate. And they would have no choice but to sell me the rights to your book. Now, to be honest, if I bought the option for $50,000, I'm going to have to pay you a whole lot more money for the rights to the book. But I can exercise it against your estate in the event that you die. An offer can be terminated by operation of law by a statute or court decision that makes the offer illegal. Let's say, for educational purposes only, that currently it is legal to possess assault rifles in New York State. So I offer to sell you 2 dozen AK-47 assault rifles for $10,000. That's actually a really good price. However, at midnight tomorrow, it becomes illegal to possess an assault rifle in the state of New York. Well, if you accept my offer right now, we have a contract. If you wait till midnight, because it's now become illegal due to a change in a statute, the offer terminates automatically by operation of law. And number 4, by lapse of time. By lapse of time. By lapse of time. As master of the offeror can set a date by which an offer must be accepted. Once that date has passed, the offer terminates automatically by operation of law. I offer to sell you my car for $10,000. You have until next Wednesday at 1:35 p.m. to accept my offer. This means that at 1:36 p.m., the offer terminates by operation of law due to lapse of time. The time period that you had to accept expired. Now, if the offeror fails to set a date by which the offer must be accepted, the offer terminates automatically in 90 days by operation of law. Now, just to be very, very clear, 90 days is the outer limit on how long an offer will remain open if the offeror does not specify how long you have to accept an offer. The subject matter of the offer will dictate how long the offer actually stays open. 90 days is the outer limit, right? But if you are buying a truckload of produce, a truckload of apples, apples do not last for 90 days. So if you're buying a truckload of produce, the offer might terminate in 5 days by operation of law. If you have a seasonal shop and I make Christmas decorations and I offer to sell you a truckload of Christmas decorations, well, you can't think about buying Christmas decorations for 30 days, right? Let's say I offer to sell them to you in September. When is Christmas? In December, right? So that might be 30-day window. just because the goods are perishable, right? If I wait 90 days to sell them to you and you don't buy them, I can't sell them to anybody else. So once again, this 90-day period is the most length of time an offer will remain open, right? It depends totally on the subject matter of the contract. Acceptance, acceptance, acceptance. Acceptance is a voluntary act, either in words or conduct, by the offeree that shows assent to the terms of the offer. Except in special circumstances, only the person to whom the offer is made can accept it. Now, that goes with the reasonably certain or definite terms in an offer. Who, what, when, where. First one is who, to whom the offer is made to. That has to be specified. All right, so as a general rule, if I make an offer to you, it's only to you, so only you can accept that offer. What would be a special circumstance? Well, let's say you have a designated agent who you have empowered to accept offers on your behalf. For example, you're selling your house. You probably hire a real estate agent, right, to deal with selling the house. And you will empower this real estate agent to accept all offers over a certain amount, right? For example, let's say you're putting your house on the market and you have it listed for $2.5 million. Now, $2.5 million, based on how the market is probably the most that you can get for your house. It's probably almost like a whoosh. That's the best possible price, right? So you tell your agent, your real estate agent, I want $2.5 million for my house. However, if somebody offers 2.4, right, you can accept that offer, right? So you've empowered that agent to accept offers on your behalf. Right now, a person who is not empowered to accept offers on your behalf, a person that is not acting as your agent, cannot accept an offer for you. Now, the acceptance must be unequivocal. This is a requirement of the mirror image rule. The mirror image rule refers to a contract principle that acceptance must match the form of the offer to form a contract. Acceptance must match the form of the offer to form a contract. A reply purporting to be an acceptance which does not reflect the terms of the offer is considered a rejection and a counteroffer. Acceptance must mirror the offer. That's what unequivocal means. Now I got to go back to this one more time. One more time. I want you to notice something that maybe you did, maybe you didn't. What makes a response conditional? There's certain words that leave no wiggle room. Must, only, but, if. If you hear those words, but, only, must, if, in an acceptance, it's not an acceptance. It's a conditional acceptance. And a conditional acceptance is a rejection. I can't emphasize this enough. Acceptance must be unequivocal. This means that the only true power that the offeree has is to say yes or no. No more, no more, no more. Silence as acceptance. Ordinarily, silence cannot be acceptance. Now, because I said ordinarily, you know there's some exceptions. Silence can operate as acceptance if an offeree takes benefit of offered goods or services, even though he or she had an opportunity to reject and knew they were being offered with the expectation of compensation. I'm sitting on my front porch, drinking a beer, when little Johnny, the 13-year-old from next door who cuts grass to make extra money, comes to my front lawn. He has his lawnmower with him, and I take a sip of beer. As I look at him, I don't say anything. He doesn't say anything. He starts up his lawnmower as I sit there drinking my beer, and he proceeds to mow my front lawn. Now, for the 15 minutes that it took me to do it, I drank 3 beers, enjoying myself in a nice summer evening. And when he finished, he turned off the lawnmower. He walks up to my porch, comes up the steps and says, "Mr. Clare, I've cut your grass. Can I have my $35? I put my beer down, and I look at him and say, "I didn't ask you to do a damn thing. Get the hell off my porch." What does little Johnny do? He gets off my porch, and the next day, he sues me for breach of contract. Would he win? The answer is definitely yes. Why? In this case, my silence served as acceptance because I sat there drinking a beer, watching him cut my grass. I could have told him not to when he came up on my lawn, but I did not. Now, I knew that he was cutting the grass with the expectation of being paid because, as I said when I first started the story, little Johnny cuts grass for extra money. Everybody in the community knew that's what he did to make money. Right? So my silence served as acceptance because I could have said no, and I didn't. He cut my grass, and I knew he expected to be paid for doing it. Now, had I been in the back barbecuing, and little Johnny came to my front lawn and he mowed my lawn, and when he finished, he knocked on the door and said, "Mr. Clare, I've cut your grass. Can I have my $35? I wouldn't have to pay him. Why? Because if I was in my backyard when he was cutting my front lawn, I did not have the opportunity to reject his offer. Now, if little Johnny wasn't little Johnny, but little Jay, my son, and I sat there watching him cut the grass, would I have to pay him? The answer is no. Why? Because I did not know he expected to be paid to cut grass on a lawn of the house that he lived in. So I wouldn't have to pay him. All right? Hope that makes sense. Now, the second situation where silence can serve as acceptance occurs when the parties have had prior dealings in which the offeree has led the offeror reasonably to understand that the offeree will accept all offers unless the offeree sends notice to the contrary. Now, this seems complicated, but it's really not. You think about things like old school cell phone contracts, right? Back in the old days, I don't know if they're bringing this back, but when I first started buying cell phones, basically we were tied in for 2 years. Now, to encourage us to sign with a particular service provider, they'd always give us free phones to start a contract. And a lot of times, we'd be aware of what phones were coming out, and my 2 years are over. And there's a phone coming out 8 months after my contract is up. Now, I don't want to spend a lot of money on a phone. I want a free phone. So what do? I don't renew my contract. I'm not out of contract because I'm waiting for the phone I want to come out. What does the cell phone company do? They keep my service on. Think about this now. Based on our prior dealings, the contract that we had for 2 months where every month they sent me a bill to keep the line on and I paid it, I, the offeree, led the cell phone company, the offeror, reasonably to understand that I, the offeree, would accept their offer of service keeping my line on unless I, the offeree, sent notice to the contrary, unless I called them up and said, cut this line or I transfer my number to another carrier, right? As long as I didn't do those two things, they understood based on my silence that the contract will keep on going, keep on going. Just as the offeror must communicate the offer to the offeree is required to communicate acceptance to the offeror. Now, in a unilateral contract, a promise for an act, no communication of acceptance is generally necessary because acceptance is normally evident. Reward, $500 for the return of my little dog Fluffy. How do you communicate acceptance? You bring the dog to me, right? So there's no real mode of acceptance, right? Because the only way you can accept the offer is by performing the required act. Notice is necessary if the offer requests notice or has no adequate means of determining whether or not there's been performance or if it's required by the law. All right, there's some situations where even with a unilateral contract, right, the offeror may not know, right? For example, I offer to pay you $500 to deliver my car from New York to California. I'm still in New York. How do I know the car got to California? You call me up on the phone and you tell me it's there. In bilateral contract, communication of acceptance is necessary because acceptance is in the form of a promise, and the contract is formed when the promise is made. As you remember, a bilateral contract is a promise for a promise. I offer to paint your kitchen next Wednesday if you bake me a cake next Tuesday, right? Today is Friday. How do I know whether or not you accept my offer? You have to communicate it to me because it's a promise for a promise. Today, we're not doing anything except promising to do something next week. Communication of acceptance is not necessary if the offer dispenses with it. If an offer can be accepted in silence, no communication is necessary. Mode and timeliness of acceptance. Acceptance is timely if it's made before the offer is terminated. Acceptance is effective when it's sent by whatever means is authorized by the offeror. Now, we call this the mailbox rule. Specifically, the mailbox rule is a rule of law that holds that an offer of a contract is effective immediately once the acceptance is communicated, whether by mail or other means. Now, the mailbox rule is pretty old and it predates most of the current tech that we use today. And back in the old days, a contract was insurance. And back in the old days, before you had phones, before you had the internet, before you had fax machines, people communicated by snail mail. You wrote a letter and you mailed it. And it took time to get from one part of the country to another, right? So let's say I'm a fabric manufacturer, you're a tailor. I'm based in New York, you're based in San Francisco. Let's say it's 1889. I send you a sample book by mail with an order slip. It takes 2 weeks to go by train and stagecoach from New York City to San Francisco. You see the sample book, you see some fabrics that you like, you fill out the order form, right? And you mail it back to me with the check. It takes another 2 weeks to come back to me. That's 4 weeks between me making the offer and physically receiving your acceptance. Now, here's the thing. If you're a smart business person, I'm sure you are, you have the sample book, and you know because you've made the order and you've paid for it that you'll soon receive this fabric. So you start showing the fabric to some of your customers. Your customers make orders for you to produce them clothing from the fabric you're going to receive from me. Now, the mailbox rule says as soon as you mail that acceptance, we had a contract. And that means that I cannot change my mind as of the date stamped on the envelope. We have a binding contract, and this is to protect you, right? Because if I could change my mind in between sending you the offer and you sending me the acceptance, you would be in breach of contract with all those people that you entered into contracts with to make clothes from the fabric you bought from me, if I could change my mind. Now, there are a couple of requirements with the mailbox rule, right? Particularly going old school. And, requirement number one for it to be in effect is first, that you have the proper address on the envelope. Second is that you have the proper postage on the envelope. Those are the two big requirements. And if you've met those requirements under the old school mailbox rule, you're good to go. Even if the post office misplaces your letter and it doesn't get back to the offeror in a timely fashion, as long as you've done what you were supposed to do. Now, if you made a mistake with the address, or you made a mistake with the postage, all bets are off. Now, sometimes you have situations that do arise where a person might reject an offer, and it might be one of those real strong rejections. I send you this sample book, you look at my fabric, and you decide it's garbage. So what do? You write me a scathing letter telling me how bad my merchandise is, and you never want to do business with me again, and you run down to the mailbox and you throw it in. While you're mailing the letter, one of your best customers comes in, is looking through the book, and decides to order 17 dresses of this hideous fabric. So what do? You write another letter, insert in that order form, and you check in it, and you run to the post office and you mail that one also. The question would be, do we have a contract? The answer is maybe. If I receive the acceptance before I receive the rejection, we have a contract. If I receive the rejection and then receive the acceptance, I, the offeror, have the option of accepting your acceptance or not. Right? The idea being, if I'm not too insulted, I probably still want to do business with you because money is money. Now, please bear in mind, there is a limitation on the mailbox rule. There is a limitation on the mailbox rule. First, Means can be specified by facts or by law. By facts or by law. If the offeror specifies the exclusive means, the contract is not formed unless the offeree uses those means. Also, if the offeror specifies a receive by date, I must receive your answer no later than. That's the date that he or she must have the answer in their hand, not the date that you mail it. If the offeror does not specify certain means, the offeree is implicitly authorized to accept by the same means as the offeror used to communicate the offer, or any faster means. Mail, if the parties are at distance, or any medium reasonably used under the circumstances. A medium is reasonable if it's the one used by the offeror or the one customarily used in similar transactions, unless the offeree knows of circumstances that would argue against it. Right? I mail you a letter with an offer in it. You want to accept the offer. However, you know that the delivery services, the post office is about to go on strike. So what do? Right? You send it by faster means. You send it by faster means, maybe Federal Express or someone like that. Exceptions to the rule that a contract is formed when acceptance is sent by authorized means are as follows. If acceptance is not properly dispatched, in most states, it will not be effective until it's received. And then, unless it was timely sent and received. Right? So what do we mean not properly dispatched? You put the wrong postage on an envelope. You put the wrong address, so you misspell somebody's name on an envelope. If the offeror stipulates that acceptance is not effective until received, right? I talked about that, right? Must receive no later than. And if the rejection is received first, regardless of whether or not the acceptance or rejection was sent first. An acceptance sent by unauthorized means is often not effective until it's received. Right? If I tell you you have to send it by mail and you decide to send it by Pony Express, it's not effective until I get it. Technology, technology, technology. Due to the internet, the mailbox rule is not needed because online acceptance is instantaneous. Right? A lot of these things are old, as you guys are probably thinking as we went through this lecture. Right? Technology has changed everything. Right? Everything is instant gratification at this point. Right? The same applies with the acceptance of contracts.